Welcome, everyone. This is Elsie Kearns, and tonight I asked Pam Younghans to come on. She is going to have an excellent event this Wednesday, September 14th, and we're going to be talking about all of the events from September through December, and there's a lot happening. So I wanted to get a little preview with Pam about what to expect on this evening event. It will be on Zoom, it'll be recorded for replay, and you will also have her PowerPoint slideshow and the video and audio. So Pam, welcome tonight.
Nice to see you, Elsie.
Yeah. So I want to start out the first question I have, because I don't know a lot about astrology the way you do, is on this week's journal, you talked about this convergence event. So how would you describe that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So, when things converge, like you think of different rivers converging together, they form this more powerful, streams coming together form a more powerful river. So what we have going on really now through the end of September and into October as well, we have Saturn and Uranus, which are the planets that have to do with stability and status quo, and the planet of change and progress. They are in conflict with each other. So they are kind of butting heads and creating a lot of turmoil throughout this time. So that's two of the streams coming together. The third stream is that Jupiter is running right down the middle between them two. So we say Jupiter is at the midpoint between Saturn and Uranus. But what that does is activate even more strongly the energies of that tension between the past and the future. What's always worked, and then the realization that things need to change because there are some things that just aren't working. So there's that strong tension already, and then Jupiter is the biggest known planet in our solar system. So it always magnifies things. So it's like, it's not only adding its energy to the river, but it's making the river even bigger. So all of this internal, external conflict. And I think we feel it internally right now in that sense of there's big change happening, and we're moving forward in a big way, but then a part of us is kind of fearful of that because we don't know what it means. And there's so many unknowns, and a part of us really would like to dig in and kind of hold on to what's familiar. So that's the stress point that we're at this point. As I said, this is very strong September and October, but very strong the last 2 weeks of September especially. So we have that going on kind of internally, and then the way it manifests in the outside world, a lot of this has been behind the polarization of the different political parties, the conservatives and the liberals. That's the Saturn and the Uranus. This was an aspect that was very strong throughout 2021. And we can recall that big struggle between those two factions that really got huge in 2021, and now it's coming back in again. So that's the convergence zone that we're in. And Jupiter also adds some of the flavors of Jupiter rules the legal system. So it can also bring in more legal kinds of questions, Supreme Court questions, all of that. So this is the convergence zone where all three of these energies are coming together. Does that make some sense?
Absolutely, yes. Now, we have a lot of retrograde stuff going on. Of course, Mercury just went retrograde on Friday, and I have absolutely experienced that, including today, and some glitches. So you also mentioned Mars. So tell us about these two retrogrades.
So the Mercury retrograde usually goes for about 3 weeks, and we're used to that because Mercury goes retrograde maybe 3 times a year, sometimes 4 times a year, depending on the timing of it all. But we're kind of used to, okay, well, we're going to kind of put things on pause for about 3 weeks. We're going to take it easy. We're going to be very clear. We're not going to make decisions if we don't have to. There's all that kind of standard advice during Mercury retrograde. Now, Mars goes retrograde every 2 years, so it doesn't happen as often. And it's retrograde for a longer period of time. So Mars is going to go retrograde in October 30th, and it will be retrograde through, sorry, I'm looking at my notes, January 12th. So this is important for many reasons. I mean, Mars is how we take action, how we assert ourselves, also how we express anger. And it's that ego drive that Mars represents. So we've got a very long period. So that's November, December, January, almost 2.5 months when Mars is retrograde. So again, we can't stop our lives, but we are going to need to be very observant of where we might act impulsively. And Mars is going to be in Gemini, which is a sign of our mental state. And so there is a little bit of reminiscence to Mercury retrograde with this too, because Mercury rules our mental state as well. So it's just kind of a complicated energy. I'm going to talk about this more, of course, in the class. But we are actually already in what's called the shadow period of this Mars retrograde. So a planet will go up to a certain point, and then it'll go retrograde, which is the backwards motion, and then it'll go back, and then it'll go forward again. So we've already crossed the point that Mars will come back to. So we're in this shadow period. So we're already getting a little bit of the flavor of Mars retrograde. So if things are, if there's a lot of nervous energy, and I think we're really feeling that. Communication glitches, so right now we have the overlay of both Mercury retrograde and Mars in this retrograde shadow. Anyway, I'll talk more about that in the class, but that's going to be significant, especially because once we get into December, then we're going to have this full moon in Gemini, which is, again, going to activate some of that Mars energy being retrograde. So there's a lot going on between the convergence zone and Mars coming in. There's just a lot. So we're going to be discussing all of this in more depth in the class.
Well, Pam, that makes a lot of sense. And I know that with each full moon, we're in a full moon weekend, that beautiful harvest moon. It also heightens all the emotions. So we're going to go through this each month, correct?
Yeah, and it depends. We have a full moon every month.
Right.
But sometimes if everything else is already elevated, and then we get the full moon on top of it, so we think of this convergence zone and Mars in the shadow of the retrograde and Mercury retrograde, then we got this full moon this weekend, and the full moon was actually square, so in a hard aspect to Mars. So there's been a lot of this nervous energy and emotional energy and anger, feeling frustrated and irritated really easily. So that's been woven into the full moon experience. I think that the full moon in October, I'm looking at my notes for the class. I think that's not going to be quite, well, full moon in October is in Aries though. So there's some forcefulness there. The even bigger part is that the full moon in November is actually a total lunar eclipse. So I'm going to spend a fair amount of time talking about that in the class, but that's going to be pretty powerful because it also involves, it's conjunct, so aligned with Uranus and square Saturn. So it's really activating this Saturn-Uranus energy that I was talking about at the beginning. So there's a lot going on. This is why I called the class Walking the Tightrope.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be really easy to fall off that tightrope. And there are certain techniques that tightrope walkers learn, to not look at the rope, just look ahead. So there's a lot of symbolism in the title that I've chosen, Walking the Tightrope. I'm going to explore that a little bit too. But yeah, it's kind of, call it a crunch time. But our job is going to be to walk that tightrope so that we don't fall off either side.
Yes, and I also like that you said that it was going to be very important for us to stay focused and balanced, which is just what you talked about. And again, we're going to explore closely for the webinar, the class on Wednesday, this Wednesday, September 14th. And if you are on Pacific time, that'll be at 4 o'clock. It'll be at 7 o'clock on Eastern Daylight Time, and 6 o'clock on Central Time, and 5 o'clock on Mountain Time. So all the time zones are covered, and we would love to have you join us. If you haven't signed up, here is the link. It is $27, and you will again receive the replay, a video replay, the calendars, and also you'll have an audio replay. So Pam, one of the special things that you do for these classes are your calendars. So would you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I do create a calendar for each one of the months. So you'll be getting 4 calendars, and we send them out ahead of time so you can print them out so you can use them for note taking during the class. And I list on the calendar the most important planetary aspects that will be going on, and I'll discuss those. So it's not that you have to know astrology to be a part of this class. I'll explain what they mean. And then I think the part that most people really like, and I know Elsie has mentioned this, is that I always use a symbol on the days that are kind of more pressure points. For this class, I'm using the symbol of dragonfly, and I'll explain why I chose that. But so for each day that really we want to be paying close attention to walking the tightrope and to not falling off, each day that fits into that category, there's a little image of a dragonfly. So that's as a quick reminder to say, oh, okay, well, today I want to really pull out my spiritual toolbox and stay focused and stay calm and stay in balance and stay flexible and all of those things that a tightrope walker needs to do to be successful in crossing from here to there.
Well, it certainly seems like the last couple of years have been just amazing astrologically, and this year is no different. So we really look forward to what's going to happen as we enter fall fully and head on into the holidays and the new year for some people. So I can't wait to hear the full story this Wednesday, September 14th. And you can simply sign up at this link. If you have any questions or concerns, you can contact me, Elsie Kearns. And also, just a reminder that all of this is set up through Eventbrite, so your confirmation email, all of the follow-up emails will be coming from Eventbrite. And if you're not familiar with being on webinars or Zoom, just let us know and we'll walk you right through it.
Thank you, Elsie.
You're welcome. So Pam, so great to be with you and get a little bit of a preview. And I will see you this Wednesday.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Elsie.